And I think like a big bad guy, like the big bad in your game, should definitely have the option to critical hit.
We're going to get even deeper into the One D&D rules with one specific thing that I have a feeling you're going to have thoughts on, which is
I have
that...
a guess,
what is
but tell me what it is, and I'll tell you if I'm right or wrong.
Okay. Critical hits.
I'm wrong.
Okay. What did you think I was going to say?
I thought it was going to be a nat 20 on a skill checks counting as actual just automatic successes.
And one's counting as automatic failures.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Which is, it's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, which, we kind of do that anyway, so it's not really a big deal.
The only issue I see with that is when someone's like, I'd like to flap my arms and try to fly. And you go roll for it, and they roll nat 20. And it's like, all right, well, now the rules say that I have to let you do it. Which leads to some interesting and hilarious scenarios, of course. But it's like, depends on the tone of your game. So.
I saw one example, not to derail too much, but where like Brennan Lee Mulligan was doing a Dimension 20 thing, and one of the players was like, I want to roll to see if I can see ghosts. And he's like, all right, do it. And nat 20. And he ended up narrating this amazing scene where a character that they've been looking for came back in ghost form and gave information before getting sucked back into the ethereal plane. And it was like, nice. Very good.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, critical hits. So the way that they make it sound, I'll just read you what they say about critical hits and tell you what people have been discussing. Critical hits. Weapons and unarmed strikes have a special feature for player characters, critical hits. If a player character rolls a 20 for an attack roll with a weapon or an unarmed strike, the attack is also a critical hit, which means it deals extra damage to the target. You roll the damage dice of a weapon or unarmed strike a second time and add the second roll as extra damage to the target. For example, a mace deals bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier. If you score a critical hit, it's 2d6 plus strength modifier. If your weapon or unarmed strike has no damage dice, it deals no extra damage on a critical hit. Okay, so you might have noticed one little interesting thing that they mentioned there. That this is a special feature for player characters. I.e., they're saying, and I think they've clarified this, that essentially the GM doesn't crit.
That's dumb.
Yeah, I think that's going to be where they get most of the pushback. That the monsters don't crit, that like the GM just does not critical on anything.
I mean, you could just add more monsters if you want to do the damage, but critical hits are supposed to be like, I guess I get their thought process there, where a GM rolling a crit or even faking it and just saying they crit isn't fun for the players necessarily.
Yeah,
but it's supposed to be a moment of tension in that case.
Right. I kept thinking about that when I heard it, and I thought to myself, well, that doesn't seem fair. I mean, if the player characters can crit, or critically fail for that matter, I would imagine that the GM, your DM essentially, Dungeon Master, should be able to do the same. But I started to realize that from a design perspective, it's probably not so great. And it kind of goes back to, I don't know if you ever heard like Alfred Hitchcock talk about the nature of tension.
Probably.
Okay. So Alfred Hitchcock once said, tension is not people sitting around a table and then a bomb goes off. Because the bomb goes off and it's over, and now you're just cleaning up the wreckage. Tension is where you have a bunch of people sitting around a table, and you announce that there is a bomb under the table. And then you just keep going about your dinner. You've created tension. I think critical hits, or the ability for monsters to critical hit you, is that tension. You've gotten into a scenario where you don't know, but there's like a 1 in 20 chance that the monsters are going to do a shit ton of damage to you. And you might want to be aware of that in case, you start thinking that you're going to screw around and, you dance around on the playing field. That you should actually know that there is tension and danger to be had in that scenario from a storytelling perspective, if nothing else.
I think if they wanted to modify that to be like monsters that have multi-attacks cannot critical hit on a multi-attack. Because then if you're getting hit with 2 claws and a bite, I can't suddenly, oh shit, I just criticaled twice on you with this monster who gets 3 attacks to your 1 attack.
Yeah.
That would be more fair, I think.
Right.
And I think like a big bad guy, like the big bad in your game, should definitely have the option to critical hit. They are the quintessential evil you've been tracking down for your whole campaign. They should be a threat.
Oh, yeah. If you're going up against a Vecna or a Tiamat, they should definitely be able to critical. I don't understand why they would. But even frankly, the lowly little goblin who comes up to you with a little knife might seem innocuous. You might be like, I got this. Then he crits, and you get, ow! Stabbed, and it does a chunk of damage, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's like 20 of these assholes around me.
Right.
This is a problem. I gotta really focus up and deal with this. I really gotta do that. I think the one thing that they were talking about was the idea that maybe, with the heavier aspect that they've been doing on legendary actions or special actions like that it might compensate. But I don't know. I think legendary actions, when you're coming up against creatures that have them, are because you're a party of 6 people and they're the one creature, and having them able to act between each person helps them survive when you're dealing with a kraken or a dragon, so to speak. So I'm not really that big on that. Now, if you wanted to say that you couldn't crit on legendary actions, I'd kind of understand that, because then we start getting insane. But who knows? But in general, the idea that the DM can crit, I think, has to stay in. If they were changing anything from this source material, I'd say you might want to ditch that, or just make it very optional. That's a session 0 thing to talk to your players about.
I think having it as an optional session 0, hey, do you want it to be so these guys can crit on you, you can crit on them? Or would you like to play it where they can't crit, therefore you probably won't just randomly get smacked for twice as much damage as normal?
Right.
Which I guess I understand it, where monsters occasionally have multi-attacks or very powerful attacks, even at lower levels. That could just murder through a party.
Yeah, the murdering through a party is definitely not fun. But, again, if you're not going to really make your system feel very lethal, I don't know if you really build up the tension that makes people understand that it is definitely a world that you have to be concerned about. If the dragon can't really do all that much, you know how much damage it maximum can do, and you've done the calculation. You're like, oh, I'm fine for 3 rounds. But if you get 1 crit in there, that's more like 2. I have to recalculate. It keeps them from doing too much math in the background of thinking about it. Maybe that's more of a design issue than a mechanical issue for me. Just in terms of the functionality of it and trying to create more satisfying narratives that have combat in it. But me personally, I don't really like that rule.